So far on our trip, many of the people we've talked with in New York have discussed experiences and stories about Hurricane Irene. The hurricane hit New York in August 2011 and caused dramatic flooding along many small creeks and rivers, including the Rondout Creek, a tributary of the Hudson River that flows through the town of Rosendale.
We took a ride to Rosendale and met with Catherine Taylor Rosenbaum, who has a house along the Rondout Creek.
David and I have been looking for a weekend house for a number of years prior to having even our first child, and when we found this place with the river and the dock, that was it. It was just right.
During the hurricane, the Rosenbaums experienced severe flooding and property damage. One of the many things they lost in the flood was their floating dock. This spring, they'd built a new one to replace it, and we arrived just in time to help them put the dock in the water.
While we were working, their neighbor Bob shared some of his thoughts on climate change.
I've been plowing snow for 55 years, so I've seen some climate change.
Yeah.
I think I plowed 4 times this past winter, but I had to be quick because if you waited a couple hours, it would be melted away.
Yeah.
I've cut back now. I'm down to like 25 or 30 customers.
Yeah.
I used to have 50-something customers.
Do you think things have slowed down in general, or that this past year was just kind of a freak year? I mean, obviously...
Well, back in the 50s and into the 60s, I mean, we had substantial storms. It's definitely going toward the warmer and less blizzards. Yeah, this winter was like we were living in the Carolinas.
And once we had the dock in the water, we took it upon ourselves to make sure everything was safe.
Afterward, we talked with Catherine about her experiences in Irene.
During Hurricane Irene, the water level under that bridge was just barely below the foundation, the metal support of the bridge.
So how many feet did the water come up?
25 feet above normal. Wow. It was the highest flood ever recorded. It was a foot higher than the flood of 1955, which was supposed to be the 500-year flood. Mm-hmm. Most of the roads were impassable. Everything was washed out. My husband was able to find a way to get back down to Manhattan, and I stayed at my friend's house and drove back here the following morning about 11, and it was shocking. Right about here is where I left my car, and this is where the water was. It was this high. And that was after the peak of the flood. So I saw my house from here, and the water, it was just like all the way up to the front door. Now this is after it's gone down a bit, but I'm standing on the driveway there,
Right.
and that's my front porch.
Wow.
There's a little hole in the floor here. I could hear water through that hole, and I got freaked out, and I plugged it with paper, and I went upstairs and slept in the boys' room that night because I was afraid. And then the next day when it was daylight, I went outside. This is the water mark from the flood of Hurricane Irene in August. The water filled the entire basement, and the water was up to here. That was 2 days after. There were fish swimming around the basement. Everything was ruined. The electrical system, the washer, dryer, the furnace. It was the most terrifying natural disaster I've ever experienced.
You said that it flooded in 2005.
Yes.
How often does the Rondout flood here?
more frequently. From 88 until 2005, there was nothing. And then in 2005, it flooded. In 2007, I think 2010, twice in 2011. Everybody seemed to agree, like, this is the future. This is what we're all afraid of. Like, I certainly felt that this was not going to be the last flood. For me, I just wanted to close the door and walk away from the house. I can't still believe that it's not going to happen again.
Do you think that climate change is something that's really happening?
We've seen it here for sure. When we first bought the house, the winters were cold. We had a lot of snow. Summers were warm. Everything was like normal. And then, even then, people told me that the river would freeze over prior to when we had the house. It never has frozen over since we've had the house. Neighbors told me of ice skating on the river right out here. But the summers have gotten into the hundreds, which they had never done before. And the winters have gotten, like we had a decade maybe of almost no snow. This year, we had 2 snowstorms all year, all winter. But the winter before that, we had normal snow. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's definitely getting warmer and warmer.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are alive now, it's their grandchildren that are going to be inheriting this raped earth that can't provide for the people. And it makes me sad for my children to have to deal with such a crippled environment. And the fact that everything has become so political, and yet it's really a life and death situation for the earth and for the people.